Hey everyone, welcome to the Stash Bandit studio. I'm Diane Harris, and today we are going to look at a couple of the features that I use and enjoy in EQ8 quilt design software. EQ8 is available from the Electric Quilt Company, and you can find them at electricquilt.com. And I will add that link to the description here so that you can easily find it. Today we are on the quilt work table, and we are going to talk about the difference when you're designing something between coloring with solid swatches, which you can see here on the pumpkin quilt, and coloring with fabric swatches. There's a time and a place for both methods. Usually at the beginning of the design process, I work with the solid colors because at that point I'm really thinking just about the value and the overall color scheme. Later on, when I have things nailed down and I'm thinking about how to make it scrappy and if scrappy will work, that is when I switch to the fabric swatches. So there's definitely a time and a place for each of the methods, and I'm going to show you how to switch back and forth between them today. So if you look over here, there's a little tool here that is really indispensable. This is a tool that lets you hide or show the quilt patch lines. So the patch lines are just little black lines around all of the patches. So right now you can see they're hidden, so this just looks like one big swatch of orange. But if I turn the patch lines on by clicking here, now you can see all the quilters are going, oh yeah. So you can see that there's actually a log cabin block in the center of each pumpkin, and you can see how the stem is formed, and you can see there are little side borders on each pumpkin. So that tells you how the piecing is done. Sometimes you want the lines on, sometimes you want the lines off. And as you become familiar with EQ8, you will figure out when they need to be on or off. So let's turn them back off for just a second. So here I've just colored everything one color for the pumpkins, one for the background, one for the stems, and so on. And the quilt looks very flat. Now, later I'll tell you about what's going to go in these blank spaces, but we'll get to that in just a little bit. So let's say that I'm close to the end of the design process and I'm ready to start pulling fabrics for this quilt, and I want to see what fabrics, what oranges will work. So over here you can see there are two tabs. There is the colors tab, which is what we're on. Do you see how that's a little bit darker? So it's selected. Down here there's a slider which helps us move through the colors. And the colors are a default palette, and there are ways to expand the palette. That would be a lesson for another day. So this is just to show you how to find the color palette. The fabric palette, we'll click this tab and open up the fabrics. So you can see here now what we have are fabric choices. And I have already expanded the default palette by adding more orange fabrics from the fabric library, which again is another lesson for a different day. But if I slide down here, you can see I added a bunch of red oranges here and some rust colors here, and over here a little further some light oranges. I didn't add them all at the same time. That's why they're in kind of a funky order. Here's some basic oranges. So what we're going to do is turn the patch lines back on and color a couple of these blocks with a variety of oranges so that you can start to see how that would look in fabric. And Because we are zoomed out now in order to see the entire quilt, what I'm going to do is come over here and choose this little tool here with the plus sign. You can see it says zoom in. So I'm going to click that, and then I'm going to zoom in so that we can see basically 3 blocks, and I'm going to recolor those with fabric. So I want to switch to the paintbrush tool. When you're in fabric tools, right here we are in fabric tools on the quilt work table, there are different choices, and paintbrush is the one I want right now because paintbrush colors just one patch at a time. So I'm going to select an orange that I like, and I'm just going to click over here a few times to fill some patches with it. And you can see I'm just going to click around. And in the interest of saving time, I'm going to put a couple of each color in each block. But I would say when you're choosing fabrics for a scrap quilt and when you're coloring something in EQ, you do not want every last color that you use to be matching. Matching is really having everything matchy is the enemy of interest. Interest is created by variation or by difference. So when something is really different, it's much more interesting than if it's very much the same, let's say, as all of its neighbors. So we're getting there. Just have a couple more to do. I think I'm going to go to the reddish oranges here and add a few of those because this is looking kind of flat to me. I want it to be not flat. I want it to be interesting. There we go. That's a little too similar. You can see how much fun this is. You can do this for hours on end, and then sometimes you say, oh, I better stop and actually go start sewing. Oh, that's a stripe that we don't really need. There we go. So we kind of have those 3 blocks colored with fabric. Let's do this one here. And now let's pick some greens and do the stems. Now because Scrappy is my thing, I would put 2 different greens in each stem. Because remember, sameness is the enemy of interest. Interest is built when things are different, when there's variety. Okay, so there we have the pumpkins and the stems, and then I want to find a background. This is the background that I've been using. Now, we were on paintbrush, which colors one patch at a time. Now I'm going to switch to swap color, which means that everything I touch over here will be swapped out for this fabric here. So everything that's this color, you can see all these patches are the same color. All these backgrounds are the same. So if I just click once, they're all going to switch to this fabric because it's what I have selected over here in the fabric palette. Okay, one click, there you go. Just that easy. Now, I think we're going to zoom back out so you can see the entire quilt again. Now you can see we just colored these three blocks, and I'm going to turn the patch lines off again. So now you can kind of see that this is starting to look more like it would look in fabric. So you get kind of a realistic view of what those pumpkins are like. Let's zoom back in with the patch lines off so that you can see. So you're kind of starting to get the idea of how different things look when they're colored with the fabric swatches or when they're colored with the solid colors. Now certainly you could take one block and color it in various, whoops, I need to go back to the paintbrush tool. You could color various shades of orange in the solids. And there's nothing wrong, but let me show you what happens here. Something lighter. Okay, so let's zoom back out and turn the patch lines off. So it's just not quite as realistic of a look when you color with a variety of the solid colors as it is when you do scrappy with the fabric swatches. So let's go back in without the patch line so that you can see that again. It's just not quite the same if you're wanting to know how it will look in scrappy fabrics. Zooming back out, give you that idea. So I know this feels like you're drinking from a fire hose, but when you get EQ, you will start at the very beginning and work through it in a very systematic way. So it will make a little more sense because each concept and tool that you learn will build on what you already know, and it won't feel like you jumped in the middle quite so much. EQ8 is such wonderful software that does so many hundreds of things. You will absolutely love it. So thanks for being with me here for just these few minutes, and I hope to see you again. This is Diane Harris with Stash Bandit. Thanks a bunch.